Welcome all to the third and final episode in my series, exploring a trilogy of books known to have inspired Mother 3. In each video, I've been summarizing the novels one at a time, pointing out anything similar to the game along the way, and, by extension, any moment that may have influenced Itoi when he wrote the game's script. This video, covering the last book, will work a little differently though. For the first half, I will be giving a simplified synopsis of the novel, which, believe me, is necessary. The narration jumps from past to future and confounds the twins' names, while in the second half I'll explain how it all comes back to Mother 3. I highly encourage you to watch those previous videos and PK teleport back when you're done. As always too, this is the only warning I'll give about spoilers. Just know they are present all throughout the video. I imagine most of you have already played or know about Mother 3 already, but consider this a last chance to read the books and retain their surprise. The Notebook was all about twin brothers Lucas and Klaus hardening themselves physically and mentally, amidst the ongoing war in order to adapt. It ends in their separation, on opposite sides of the border as a final test of will. That story continues through Lucas's perspective in The Proof, which illustrates a tragic life as he copes with loss, ultimately leading to his disappearance. When Klaus finally returns to the country 20 years later in search of and waiting for his twin though, he's arrested due to a now expired visa and invalid ID. The authorities confiscate his notebook, the very notebook that supposedly documented everything that's happened in the last two books, but it's now revealed to be a work of fiction. With that revelation leading us to the third lie, you'd think we as readers are just going to be fed more deceit. But ironically enough, this is the one to give us the truth. I am going to be keeping things as simple as possible in summarizing, so here it goes. It wasn't a 50-year-old Klaus that came back to his hometown and was arrested. Well, it was, but Klaus, as we've known him throughout these two stories, doesn't really exist. Klaus is an alias Lucas has been using when he alone crossed the border all those years ago. Lucas then confides during his arrest that he did write his manuscript as an embellished autobiography. He explains that he tries to write as fact, but at a given point, the story becomes so unbearable because of its very truth that he has to change it. It hurts too much. This is when the real backstory of Lucas is divulged, making obvious that his fiction, while still different than what actually happened, represents all facets of his lonely life. You see, Lucas chose the assumed name of Klaus with a C, an anagram of his own name, in memory of his actual brother, Klaus with a K. The twins were separated at the age of 4, not 15, due to an event dubbed The Thing, as in the thing that ruined all of their lives. At this terribly young age, the boy's father admitted to their mother about having an affair, explaining he had to leave them as the other woman he fell in love with was now expecting his child. The twins' mom, filled with animosity and not accepting abandonment, murdered her husband with his own revolver. And even after he dropped dead, she kept on shooting. The children were present at this point when one of the bullets ricocheted into Lucas's leg, crippling him. This is the action that breaks the family apart. Lucas was sent away to be hospitalized, Klaus with a K was made to live with his dad's lover, while their mom was transferred to a psychiatric ward, having become clinically insane, believing she killed Lucas. So during his years spent in the hospital not receiving any word from his family, Lucas becomes bitter. He lashes out at the staff and bullies his fellow patients. While only a character he imagined for the manuscript, it becomes obvious that Matthias was meant to represent Lucas as a child. Lucas was always the one with the deformed leg, believing and making the other kids believe that their families hate them because of their disability, just like Matthias's greatest fear and the very reason for killing himself in The Proof. Their mother didn't actually die from a shell landing in their garden like in the Notebook either. It was instead Lucas's hospital that was bombed from the war, and the reason he's made to go live with a peasant woman he learns to call grandmother. Of course then, when Lucas, after spending his childhood here alone, decided to cross the border, it wasn't his father he made go first. It was a willing stranger Lucas only claimed to be his dad as a convincing story for when he made it to the other side. It is in this country that Lucas, aging himself up a few years on his written statement to be an adult of 18, assumes the name Klaus with a C. 3 mistruths so that he wouldn't be sent back. His alias is the third lie. Does this all start to make sense now? It is a sick, dying Lucas at age 50 who returns and is imprisoned in town looking for his brother Klaus with a K. After meeting with the police and being told he has limited time left in this country before being sent back, Lucas learns of a writer, like himself, in the capital that uses the pen name Klaus Lucas in memory of his brother, dead or disappeared. The embassy insists it'll be hard to meet with this man, as he's a secluded misanthrope, but Lucas has finally found the brother he's been looking for. Unfortunately though, their meeting does not go as expected, which ends part 1. The book then shifts to Klaus's point of view. After spending so much time in Lucas's head, we finally see the real Klaus's story, but it's one of a miserable man. He's worked his entire life at a printing press, which ruined his health through years of lead poisoning. Living with his father's mistress, Antonia, and half-sister Sarah, a girl he impossibly fell for during adolescence, Klaus gave up on the idea of love, choosing to leave and take care of his mother in their childhood home where the thing happened. And he hasn't left her side since. The problem then is that their mother never mentally recovered. She still insisted that Lucas died at her hand, chastising Klaus for being the lesser twin, wishing it was him she killed instead. Every day she praised Lucas and berated Klaus. Her vision of Lucas is of a perfect child, and Klaus is reproached in every way. Because of this toxic relationship, Klaus slowly throughout his life begins to despise the brother he never got to know. Klaus, in his own words, is pulling the greater weight between them. If Lucas is dead, he's lucky. As to Klaus, life is infinite suffering, and he would very much like to be in his brother's place. You can imagine then, after 46 years, when the twins are finally reunited, Klaus shuts Lucas out completely. Like Lucas did in his manuscript, Klaus lies about his life, claiming their mom really is dead and fabricates his story as one he wishes were true. He rejects Lucas as his brother because of a lifetime of spite developed from an awful mother. Lucas leaves dejectedly, and knowing that he's going to die soon anyway, decides to jump in front of a moving train, killing himself. The book grimly ends with Klaus watching his brother's casket being lowered next to their father's grave, thinking that the 4 of them will be truly reunited soon. When their mom passes away, Klaus will have no reason to go on living, so the last sentence of the novel has him stating, "Not a bad idea, the train." I warned you, it's heavy stuff. The third lie is the most depressing read of the 3, which is saying a lot. Can you begin to understand now where the game gets it from? Because it's time to see how this all relates back to Mother 3. First, mixing up twins is a common trope in any kind of media. But in both Itoi's and Kristóf's tale, it is crucial for the sake of storytelling that these characters are twins and their identities confused. In the case of Mother 3, their mix-up furthers the plot when Lucas assumes his brother's role to infiltrate Thunder Tower and gain intel on the Pigmask's plans. It can be discerned early on that the masked man is Klaus, so their identity swapping is more effective in universe, though it can catch less attuned players off guard. In Kristóf's writing, her clever confounding of the twins' identities worked to challenge characters in the story too, but the reader most of all. As Itoi was inspired by the twins' bond specifically in The Notebook, it's very likely their separation through a time skip and the tragic theme of never truly being able to reunite again influenced the type of story Itoi wanted to tell as well. It's implied that Klaus was either gravely wounded or already dead at the end of Mother 3's opening chapter. We don't see him again until years later, resurrected as the aforementioned masked man, the main antagonist Porky's slave. The dramatic irony of Flint just barely missing his son is explored in the third lie too, when Klaus as a child is forced to temporarily relocate to the same town as his brother because of the war. He actually sees Lucas performing at bars, but doesn't recognize him. When Klaus is ultimately confronted by Lucas at the end of Mother 3, after an official confirmation of who he is, the two begin having visions, hearing the voice of their deceased mother calling out to them to stop fighting. It is this event that allows Klaus to regain control of his mind, which also results in his suicide, likely because of realizing what Porky's turned him into, fear for his regained senses being only temporary, and a desire to see his mother again. I am thoroughly convinced that this scenario was directly influenced by Lucas's suicide in the third lie. Like that character, their reunion was always fated to be fleeting, because Klaus was supposed to have already been dead. The third lie's Klaus is dead in one sense too. He gave up on happiness and family years ago, thinking the four of them can only reconcile in the afterlife, much like this last sentiment from Mother 3's Klaus. Honestly, for me too, this clears up a lot of mystery surrounding the game's original darker ending I've been referring to these past couple of videos. For some lore explanation, in Mother 3, the Nowhere Islands is the last remaining haven on the Earth, after it was destroyed, as it's protected by a sort of deity, an all-powerful dragon kept in comatose underneath the islands and sealed by 7 magical needles. Psi users capable of the elusive PK Love, aka Lucas and Klaus only, are able to pull these needles and awaken the dragon, who will obey the desire of either one that frees it, no matter their intention. While the game's finale is open to interpretation, I feel strongly that Lucas was successful in reviving the dragon with a heart of light, vanquishing the dystopia Porky and his army had created, and sparing everybody's lives. Through symbolism too, it's implied the world has been purified to a more natural state, before it became overrun with Porky's chimeras. If someone with an evil heart had pulled out more than half the needles instead though, the dragon would have been swayed and responded to that evil. Naturally, the twins are working against each other because of this, right? But what would have happened if Klaus, rebuilt without a heart as the masked man, was victorious instead? He's pulling the needles for Porky, because he's programmed to do so. There is no free will, so he is neither good nor evil. Shikasato Itoi answers that very question by explaining the same thing would happen, except that, in the end, everything, even the breath of life itself, would go extinct. Even the dragon, too. Perhaps a tormented Lucas, the light in his heart snuffed out following the anguish of losing his brother, could be capable of a similar feat? Lucas would no longer have the motivation for good, but he wouldn't be evil, he'd just be defeated. Then Porky would have been able to get his way no matter what. I'll leave it at this. It's hard to say for certain what could have been. There's all sorts of theories that could be discerned here, but I think that's the point. But it seems that whatever was planned for Earthbound 64, this reassuring dialogue wasn't part of it. Things were going to be as vague as possible, so there'd be more conflicting discussion in the community for sure. Pushing aside the hypotheticals though, the last point I want to make today and to wrap up this series is the train. In other words, how Lucas ended his life in the book series. I find it suspiciously coincidental that in Mother 3, Lucas putting himself in danger by crossing the train tracks is given a lot of attention. Most players already know that if you try to enter the train tunnel before progressing the story, a man will pull Lucas aside, saving his life. But what some might not realize is that this character has a brother from the other side of the tracks. Look, more brothers separated in theme, and that you can repeatedly enter the tunnel despite their warnings again and again and again for new dialogue. The pair of them will scold Lucas in different ways, telling him not to throw his life away. And while funny, is a little disturbing now given the context of Itoi's inspiration. Not to mention the fact that you actually can get hit by the train. There's a Notebook Trilogy ROM hack idea. All you have to do is add a game over screen after becoming Squished Flat Train Man. But there you have it, everyone. This project has been honestly enlightening, and I'm glad I read all the books that inspired a game meaning so much to me. And now you all have the story too. What did you think about how everything came together? I hope I conveyed the profound effect this trilogy had on Itoi, and how it provided the foundation for what Mother 3 came to be. There are some other fairly minor connections I didn't bring to light because I either couldn't incorporate them in the script organically or they simply weren't worth mentioning. But I will be posting a write-up that does include every detail. Think of it as an expanded, too long didn't watch version of my videos, breaking down each and every reference without the summarizing. That will be posted on my Patreon page first, then social media accounts, so please look out for it. Thanks for sticking with me throughout these 3 videos. I hope to see you next time. Wait, Klaus T. Lucas T. Lucas Thane? Who am I? Lucas? Or am I Thane? What would an anagram of my name even be? Ethan? Since the first video I gave in and modernized my house, by the way. That's why I'm not in the wood one anymore. Hell, Porky.